Hi, I'm Woody Huffines. I own the NerdsToGo in McKinney in Frisco, Texas, and this is Tech for the Untechnical. Is it possible that the Internet of Things devices are uniquely bad as a security risk? I would argue that the Internet of Things devices in our lives are uniquely bad as a security risk. Very different from everything else. You take Windows. Every time you turn around, Windows has an update that's a massive problem that's a security risk. Windows has been around since 1990, and we still don't have the security right. This week, the National Security Agency came out and said patch immediately because there was a crypto problem in the way that the Windows machines did cryptography. And we'll talk about that more in a minute, but something that's been around for as long as Windows, you'd think we'd get some of it right. And this security risk that was recently found that could be exploited with as few as 10 lines of code has been around since Windows 7. So for 10 or 15 years, we've had that risk, and it's been in Windows and nobody's noticed it. Not a good thing. So why might Internet of Things devices be a unique security risk? Well, the first of those things is the speed to market. We are constantly looking at new things that are connected to the internet in our homes, from the security cameras and the garage doors and the light bulbs, and the list goes on. And not only does the list go on, but the list gets bigger very quickly because people are hurrying to market because Internet of Things is a big deal. So in that speed to market and then the shortened development times to get the new product out and in people's homes as quickly as possible, there's a lot of security risks that can get introduced because of speed to market. The second piece of it is the kind of data that Internet of Things devices collect and transport. If you think about it, is there anything more personal than cameras inside your home where someone can look inside your home and speak to you through your cameras like the recent Ring problems have been having? Or if not just the data from cameras, how about the voice assistants where they're recording all the words that are going on in the house? That's a pretty big deal to have that exposed to the internet. And that doesn't even mention the health information that may be possible. I know that we've got a scale in our house. You step on the scale, it connects to the wireless and sends that data for how much I weigh this morning to my phone. It's not always a good thing, but what else are people using that collects data and collects that data all the time and collects that data in a persistent manner? And the privacy of that data is so much different and so much deeper than the things that we think of on our computer. Yeah, your tax returns are on your computer, or you might connect to your bank. But can someone listen to you and your kids have a fight? And along with the health metrics and the things that we do that we take a conscious effort to go do something about, like take our blood pressure or step on the scale, increasingly Internet of Things devices and Internet of Things infrastructure involves sensor technology, like monitoring someone's blood sugar constantly. So there's a constant stream of data that's coming from these Internet of Things devices. So that constant stream of information, whether it's a sensor device or a camera or the Alexa that's listening to you, all of that data goes somewhere so that we can retrieve it or someone can use it to help that Internet of Thing device help us. It's going to Amazon, or it's going to Google, or it's going to Withings in the case of my scale. And that data is then stored in the internet. So you have two problems. First of all, you've got a constant stream of very personal data, and that constant stream of very personal data gets stored someplace. So there are increasingly large databases of information about your most private behavior and your most private information that's being stored someplace, and it's connected through those Internet of Things devices in your house. So not only do we have to worry about the transport of that information, but you have to worry about the storage of that information. Are the people that are collecting this information storing it responsibly or using it responsibly? This week, Amazon announced that they fired 4 Ring employees for looking at people's videos, just for fun. Bad deal. So if this information is going to get transported and that information is going to get stored, it needs to be encrypted. And here's a video about encryption if you want to know a little bit more about it. But basically, public key infrastructure or public key encryption is the way the internet runs. And public key infrastructure, public key encryption, is a way to make a key pair, and that key pair is a private key and a public key. So your private key is what you use to decrypt things, and the public key is the key that someone would use to encrypt something to you. So when you have a handshake over the internet, there's a public key infrastructure that goes on so the device creates its key, and that key is what it uses to encrypt. So when we're talking about Internet of Things devices, it has to encrypt the data, or should, in a good secure system, encrypt the data as it transports it over the internet using a public key infrastructure. It's an RSA PKI key. Now, the RSA PKI infrastructure is based on mathematical problems that are easy to do one direction and impossible or infeasible to do the other. For example, for a lot of public key infrastructure, the way that those keys are created is it factors or multiplies two very large prime numbers. If you have two prime numbers multiplied together, to factor those is difficult. It's very difficult to reverse engineer that information because there's a big set of numbers and the big set of prime numbers. Now the key, if you will, a little pun, the key to making a strong key is to have a lot of randomness or entropy in the selection of those numbers. For example, if I was going to say that I'm going to encrypt something to you and I was going to use a single six-sided dice, there's only 6 possibilities for the way it can be encrypted. 6 is a nanosecond in computer time. So in public key infrastructure, the idea is that you have to have lots of randomness. So you're talking about a bazillion-sided dice when you roll the dice to get the right key. And that is vital to having secure public key encryption. The next problem, though, is how do you make something random when you're having a computer do it? Because at the end of the day, computers are deterministic machines. You're telling the computer, take this number, multiply it by this number, divide it by that number, take the modulus of this. It is a program, and that program has a series of steps, so it's a deterministic system. So how do you create entropy or randomness in a system that you're telling it what to do? Well, it's very difficult. Over the years, a lot of solutions have been provided, and one of them is the generation of pseudo-random numbers. And it's called pseudo-random numbers because it's still deterministic, but there are so many different factors that it takes into account as it's generating numbers randomly all the time that they're pseudo-random. There's enough entropy in the system that you can't predict what the number is going to come out to be. So in your home computer, you've got cycles of CPU, and you've got total clock time, and you've got revolutions of the hard drive, and how many times a read-write of the hard drive. There's a lot of things that are constantly changing on the computer. And if you sample all of those things and generate a random number based on that entropy or that chaos that's going on in the machine, you get a pseudo-random number that's usually pretty strong. What you're trying to avoid is a collision or having two keys with the same factors, or two keys that use the same random numbers to encrypt the data. Now, to give you an idea of the order of magnitude that a well-designed random program does when it generates public key encryption, there was a set of researchers that just looked at 100 million different public key pairs, public-private key pairs, and to see how many of that 100 million numbers had factors in common. And a common factor means that that encryption would be easy to break. Out of 100 million keys, they found five key collisions out of 100 million. So that's a pretty big haystack and a pretty small needle. So when these same guys went and looked at Internet of Things devices, they looked at 75 million keys. And of those 75 million keys, 435,000 of them shared factors. That means 1 in 172 of the public encryption keys that our Internet of Things devices use shared a common factor and would thus be easily breakable. And the reason that they're easily breakable is the Internet of Things devices are, first of all, they're in a hurry to get to market with them so that they're not doing a lot of stuff to make sure that they are secure. And second, they're relatively simple devices, simple sensors. They don't have a lot of stuff going on in them to create a bunch of entropy to get a truly random seed or a random number out of a pseudo-random generator that gives that encryption key the security that you need. So that's why I say I think Internet of Things devices, because of the data they collect, because it's a constant stream of data, because they send that data someplace. It has to be protected in transport and has to be protected in storage. And there are devices that can't, because they don't have the computing capacity to make strong cryptographic keys. Internet of Things devices are uniquely bad when it comes to your computer security. I'm Woody Huffines. I own the NerdsToGo in McKinney and Frisco, Texas. This has been Tech for the Untechnical. Look here. Hit the subscribe button below, mash the like button, give a comment, let your friends know, share the videos, because we sure enjoy making them. We hope you enjoy watching them.